We're here today with Chitra Divakaruni, who is the author of Arranged Marriage and the Palace of Illusions. And Chitra is gracious enough to answer some questions that we will pose to her, which will help in our study and comprehension of her work.
Yes, certainly. In my collection, Arranged Marriage, I'm actually looking at all kinds of marriages, some of which are arranged and happy, some of which are arranged and not so happy, and some women who choose their own husbands with similar results, and some women who choose not to have married at all or whose marriages fail. The tradition of arranged marriage really goes back, way back into the culture, because in one of my other novels, The Palace of Illusions, I'm writing about the story of the Mahabharata, which is 5,000 years old, and even at that time there were arranged marriages. And today as well, arranged marriages continue. A few years back, I did a nonfiction article on arranged marriage, and I found out that even today, 81% of Indian marriages are arranged. Now, most of these are arranged in the rural areas and smaller towns, but even in the very urban settings that modern Indians would find themselves in, there are arranged marriages. Now, these arranged marriages are different in that they're much more loosely set up. Parents will introduce their children to other people, and then the children can decide. So the arranged marriage has changed over time. It's come a long way from what we see in the Mahabharata, when the father would say, "This is the man you'll marry," and that was it. Now, the second part of your question was, why do some arranged marriages work and why do they not work? And I think in that way, the arranged marriage is very much like the self-chosen marriage, in that once you've decided on your partner, unlike what many people think, it's not happily ever after. You have to work if you want it to be happily ever after. So two people really need to continue adjusting to each other, continue being committed to each other, and continue to sacrifice for each other. So I think that's what would make any marriage succeed, no matter whether in the East, whether in the West, whether it's arranged, or whether you've chosen your own mate. Whereas with progress in India, the caste system, which was the other system that demarcated different layers of society, is becoming much more fluid and almost disappearing in many places. The class system remains a powerful social construct. And I guess in that way, it is true that the class system has a part to play in every culture, including the American culture. Maybe it's not as visible, maybe it's not as watertight, each of the compartments, but class systems, yes, they do exist everywhere in all cultures. And the older the culture, the more firmly entrenched the class system. In the maidservant story, we see definitely two classes, what we would call the richer master class and then the poorer servant class. And the story is in the interplay between the two classes, the whole power and agency that belong to one class, and what happens when someone from the other class becomes close to someone from the master class. So we have the maidservant who is taken under the wing of the lady of the house in this old family, and the lady of the house wants to raise her out of the class that she's in. The lady of the house wants to teach her to read and write, which is a way to escape your class. But the result will become very complicated and not successful, will be unsuccessful finally. And I think the fact that her efforts fail, that the lady of the house, her efforts fail, show us how entrenched this class system remains and how tragic the effects of the class system can be. Well, I would like to believe that we Indian women are superior and more resilient and smarter and more beautiful than everyone else. But actually, that is not the case. We are just like all women from other cultures. But I like to show in my work women who are overcoming great odds, because I think this is certainly something that women can do. The women have a great reserve of strength, really, no matter which culture they come from. And I want to show these women being pulled down by external forces, or maybe conditioning, or maybe society, or maybe family expectations. And I'm very interested in how women are able to overcome all these odds and be the people that they really want to be and the people that we admire. I think I want the women in my books to be inspiring for all of my readers, male and female. In that story that you're referring to, titled Doors, we have a young couple, one of whom, the woman is brought up in the United States, the man was brought up in India, now they're in California, and they're living quite happily. They've overcome various differences of personality and upbringing until the husband's cousin, Raj, comes to live with them. And this really throws the whole family dynamic off kilter, because Raj, like many Indians, has no concept of privacy. So he believes that whether doors are opened or closed, he can just go in. And this is just going to drive the young woman nuts. She just cannot handle this. And so the presence, the long-term presence of this other person, the extended family member who doesn't understand and perhaps is not willing to change. And he's a good person. It's not like he's an evil person. But that concept of privacy is just not in his mind. So in that case, it has a negative effect on the relationships. The relationship begins a downward spiral and will end in disaster. There are other stories in arranged marriage where extended family will have a positive impact as well, where they are there to support you, they are there to form a bond with you, they are there in your hour of loneliness and despair. And I'm thinking of a story like the final story in the collection, Meeting Mrinal, where this woman whose husband has left her is finally able to connect with her teenage son, and together they form the new family unit. There are other cases like the story Clothes, where the young woman who comes from America marries into this family, and she has to live in a tiny apartment with her father-in-law, her mother-in-law, and her husband. And she really regrets the fact that she has no privacy. She's dying to move into her new place, but her husband dies. And at that point, she finds that family can be both a support and shackles, because yes, her in-laws are very loving, but they want her to go back and live with them in India. So, you know, that's kind of a double-edged sword, and she has to decide, does she want that family bond, which is really a bond in more senses than one, or does she want to strike out on her own and be independent, but perhaps lonely?